Alright, today I'm reviewing the 29th movie in the MCU and the 35th product overall, Thor: Love and Thunder, which is the widely anticipated sequel to Thor: Ragnarok, which was the 2017 smash success, revitalized Thor. Everyone loved it. It's like top 5 MCU movies for me, so I was legitimately excited for this movie. Like most of the time, it's I wonder if there'll be a cool cameo, and will John Krasinski actually be Mr. Fantastic in this, or is that just a rumor? And it's just a lot of stuff. But for Thor: Love and Thunder, I was genuinely excited because I actually really did like Thor: Ragnarok. I love Thor: Ragnarok. And Thor: Love and Thunder is more of the same, but worse. Much worse. One of Ragnarok's greatest strengths was how funny it was, in line with director Taika Waititi's other works, Jojo Rabbit, The Hunt for the Wilder People. Thor: Ragnarok, unexpectedly hilarious, movie's greatest strength. And it's also Love and Thunder's greatest weakness, because for every joke the movie takes, probably 2 jokes don't land. There are some in here that just don't make sense. Like, sure, there's obviously a couple of chuckles here and there, but even my Thursday night preview, which is most of the time the most responsive audience, it was almost dead silent the entire time. That was a very uncomfortable theater experience for me. The humor was present, but it just wasn't landing. It was just a really long silence where comedy or something or anything should have gone, but instead it was just dead everywhere. Even worse was that the humor present was often to the detriment of the characters. Like, they saw the joke and they took the joke. It didn't even make sense half the time. And that was evident all over the place. Like, there was this really cool grenade that turned out to be a speaker that they bobbed their head to. They scratched Thor's nose while he's talking to kidnapped children, and most of the time, it's fine to play around with your friends, but when they are talking to hostages, that is not the time to mess with them. They gave Stormbreaker his first beer, which was okay. And here's what I thought was the worst one. Star-Lord tells Thor that if he ever feels lost, to just look into the eyes of the people he loves. Turns out that was after Thor tells him every single person he has ever loved ends up dying a painful death. Dude, there's a time and a place. You don't tell him to look into the eyes of people he's loved after he goes into his lore for how many people have died. There were also characters that, like the humor, they were just kind of present, but they never really landed. Like, there were these goats, and they just kept screaming, but it was never repetitive enough to the point like Sideshow Bob stepping on the rakes, and it was never in a weird or wacky way like the Mitchells versus the Machines did. They were just there. In their current state, they were merely present and nothing more. They existed. And the same can be said for a lot of the supporting cast. Like Valkyrie, who is one of the greatest strengths of Ragnarok, is mostly just there. She's actually left less developed than she was before. Her alcoholism is just gone in this movie. They did the Iron Man 2 thing, it's just gone. Korg, a fan favorite, also appears, and he's bearing his signature soft-spoken quips and humor, but this time it just doesn't work because it's not insightful or humorous, And then he also does one of those signature Marvel fake-out deaths that really should have been taken in this case. The movie needed stakes. The same present and existing thing can be said about Christian Bale's Gore the God Butcherer. I really liked his role in the film, the tonal shifts. He was menacing, creeping from the shadows, and Christian Bale, as always, is just devoted to the character. He is an excellent actor. But he's left very little to do. I've seen a lot of folks online saying that the movie needed him butchering more gods, which yes, I do agree. The Gore the God Butcherer kills a total of 1 god. It's at the beginning, and it's not even a butchering, it is a stab. But I think the better montage that Gore needed was this silent opening where you see the rise and the fall and his civilization's history. Because where the movie starts out, he's just in the desert and then his daughter dies. It felt very boom from the get-go. It felt like the writers were like, people say our villains don't have depth. How do we make them have depth? Oh, I know, we kill his daughter. And then they just did that first 2 minutes. So he just drops in, drops out. They're like, boom, develop villain. But that wasn't enough for me. I was left wanting more from him. He's a threat, but he's never really felt outside of any of the scenes he's in. The character issues don't stop there. Natalie Portman's The Mighty Thor has this awesome character and a really heartbreaking ending that should have been a lot more emotional than it was. Most of the time, cancer is not given this sort of nonchalance in movies. I'm not saying it should have been The Fault in Our Stars starring as Guardians, but I mean, that would have been an interesting thing now that I think about it. But no. It should have been just more. It needed to be more. Her workout routine paid off. She looks absolutely jacked. Out of all the characters the movie set up, Natalie Portman is definitely the one I would have wanted to see more of, because she was just a really fun addition. The titular Thor is also given his fair share of character issues. While his previous appearances almost form an arc, He's a hotshot, then he's competent, then he's responsible, then he's like fully fledged king of Asgard, then he is just completely OP, and then he fails miserably and is sent spiraling into cheese whiz depression. Love and Thunder feels like 2 steps back. While I don't agree that he now feels like a total idiot, I do agree that the character devolved to someone that Odin would probably take his powers away from. He's cocky, he's inconsiderate, he's often incompetent. Again, sometimes because they took the joke, like giving Stormbreaker his first beer, it makes him seem less. They also weirdly brush off his weight gain. Like, they spend a whole of 2 seconds just getting him back in shape. It's done almost off screen, which I feel is just super disingenuous to the character. It just adds to this feeling that nothing has stakes in this universe. Even the Spider-Man 90s animated series wasn't afraid to change status quo and make Vulture young or hideously disfigured. They couldn't even keep Thor's very realistic depression actual character beat for the movie, which is just so wrong. In general, the movie needed to be more. The characters you like, and they are here, and they are doing things, but you have seen them doing cooler and better things. It almost feels like a parody of the MCU and Norse mythology, like a really drawn out skit that they actually got A-listers for some reason, and then that's just the tone it carries for the entire movie. It's like they forgot what made Ragnarok work, It was the character growth, it was the gravitas, it was seeing all these characters interact in ways they had never interacted before, in addition to the comedy. It was not solely the comedy. Love and Thunder just really honed in on that at an alarming rate. It just sacrifices all of its stakes in favor of that comedy, and it's like a tent in that regard, because without stakes, it is just weightless, it is flippant and unreliable. It's just flapping out there in the wind, and you're like, come back, tent, and then it's like, no, I'm up here in the clouds. Sure, it's happened somewhere. It's unremarkable through and through, be it the music, Michael Giacchino, after providing career best work for the Batman, understandably was like, I'm gonna take a break, put this on autopilot. But hey, it does add to my, the MCU, they switch out the character's theme every single time they appear complaint, which, I guess is a win for me and a loss for musical consistency, because Thor is 4 movies and 11 appearances in and still doesn't have an identical leitmotif. I really didn't like the end credits, and that's a super nitpicky thing to hate on, but Ragnarok's end credits were just so visually engaging and fun, and the score was dope. Love and Thunders, they just come on, they're just names on screens. It's not fun to watch. It's just, they did it because they had to, which is the feeling the entire movie has. It also looks comparatively flat. It's the same thing I noticed with Obi-Wan Kenobi, where it's kind of digitally flat, and you can tell they use a green screen in some places, and it just looks bland. And it's definitely not just the ILM thing, because, The Mandalorian and the Batman look great. Whenever they're apparently rushing these things, because even the director doesn't like the CGI, apparently when that happens, it just doesn't look great, which is really sad because half of this movie takes place in space. I really liked Russell Crowe as Zeus. He was kind of campy, he was kind of over the top, he was talking a bit weird. My brother, who was sitting next to me, was like, what type of accent do you think he has? And I was like, I don't know, have you ever heard a Greek accent? He was like, no. So I'm assuming it was a Greek accent, I don't know. I was really into it though. He was having a bunch of fun. I was too. Russell Crowe as Zeus, everyone, take a bow. In general, I liked all the lore with the gods up in eternity or Mount Olympus or wherever they were. Even though I do wish Khonshu had been there, some consistency between the projects. Just a little Moon Knight cameo, Khonshu, you feel me. I really like the visuals in that land without color and the eternity. I mean, that was some cool looking stuff. The movie didn't deserve to be that good looking, but it was for some reason. I also really like that the movie ended, and I guess this is my spoiler warning. Probably should have had one at the beginning of the video, but here's my spoiler warning for everyone out there who didn't see this. The movie ends with Thor adopting Gore the God Butcherer's daughter, which is played by Chris Hemsworth's own daughter, and I thought that was really sweet. I was really digging it. I was like, he was Hawkeye, and the movie set this up because his relationship with Jane deteriorated because he couldn't settle down. So I was really here for stay-at-home dad Thor, who's just walks his kid to school every day. And then the movie kind of ruined it by having them jump out of a spaceship into battle, which was, again, see the joke, take the joke. My expectations were subverted, and I wish they hadn't been, because that would have been a really good place for Thor's arc to continue, you know? It would have been truly humble for this guy who had to be taught humility by being sent down to Earth, that he would actually choose to live on Earth and just do the simple life and raise a daughter. But no, they're out there doing battle, being known as Love and Thunder for some reason. The movie also had a lot of things that I just personally had nitpicks with, like that in-universe play, which Ragnarok did, but it actually had like a purpose in Ragnarok. It refreshed the audience on what happened in the Dark World, because let's be honest, you probably didn't remember the Dark World, and it was hilarious. But in here, it just felt like they were doing it because Ragnarok did it, and people liked Ragnarok, so let's do it again. And that's what the entire movie feels like, but especially evident by the play. It's just not funny. It also does that thing where it's like, the movie needs them to set up this exposition, so then the play ends like at this really weird place, like as soon as Hela destroys Mjolnir, which doesn't make any sense. Mjolnir just breaks, and then they're like, the play's over. It needed Loki. That's what this movie needed. Thor's dynamic with Loki, even when The Dark World wasn't the best movie, that was the bright spot in all of these, Thor and Loki. The movie is also for kids, like through and through. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, the ending fight does have Thor giving his powers to a swarm of children who then proceed to like fight nightmares. So that is very much like for children. Like that is the plot of Rise of the Guardians. That is the same thing that happens in Rise of the Guardians. And you know, some people are like, well, why didn't Thor just do that in the other movies? Well, first of all, their powers were yellow, so it must have been the lightning bolt. Second of all, Love and Thunder came out after those movies. So you're gonna have to forget everything that happened in those movies, because this is a blank slate and we're just doing whatever we want. Same thing with Eternity. Why didn't Thanos go to Eternity? I don't know. He needed a Stormbreaker. Why would they have a Stormbreaker drawing even if Stormbreaker didn't exist until like 5 years ago? I don't know, okay? The movie's just doing things. Like the MCU has always had this very delicate balance of being like appropriate for children and then also being like a cool post-Transformers action movie, and over the past few years it's been like, oh, the MCU is for kids, and this movie is definitely for kids. It's like they were trying to steal the audience for The Rise of Gru, basically. That's how I would describe it. Love and Thunder is basically Ragnarok on repeat, but minus the bite. It is Watiti's weakest work by far, and for the most part, it just kind of feels like it's on autopilot. There is no reason for it to exist outside of the fact that people really liked Ragnarok, including myself. I loved Ragnarok, but this movie was not it, Chief. It's also seemingly inconsequential for the rest of the MCU. Aside from Hercules showing up, nothing actually happens of note in this movie. Gore dies, original character. Portman dies, but you know, she hadn't been seen since 2013 anyway, so who cares? Thor is a kid now. Maybe that'll factor into the next thing he does. I don't know. Basically, if I don't think about it, I'm going to forget that this exists very quickly. But if I concentrate really hard on what I was doing one fateful Thursday, I will remember a few things that I did like about this movie and some things that I wish were better. And at the end of the day, that's what it is. Just a thing I wish was better. You know, it's funny, I actually remember reading a Forbes article about, you know, if the Disney Plus premieres would hurt this movie's box office potential, you know, being available on Disney Plus 45 days after the theatrical release. And after seeing the movie, I can say that's not the issue here. The issue is that in theaters or on streaming, you could rewatch Ragnarok instead. Overall, I give Thor Love and Thunder a 6 out of 10. Like the humor the movie bears, Thor Love and Thunder misses more often than it hits. I tell you what though, the Lego set is really cool. I really like this Lego set. This is dope.